Hello and welcome to Soul's Compass Healing. My name is Brianne and I warmly welcome you into this internet space where we are hopefully going to be having a reciprocal discussion about this new moon in Scorpio happening on November 1st, 2024. Before I get into it, I want to mention that my website is always linked in the description of my videos, and there you can learn more about my services. I offer one-on-one support sessions where I incorporate evolutionary astrology as well as my social work background to provide a therapeutic support for you and where you're at in your journey right now. I also am accepting donations for putting these videos out there because, yes, I am doing it for my own learning, and I also put a lot of work into them. So if you find any of this information helpful, I would really appreciate it if you have the means to go to my webpage and click the donate button there. I would really appreciate it. I am feeling very creatively challenged by this new moon. It's a very complex and intense moon, and it is going to be setting the tone, as every new moon does, for the entire month. And this is a big month in the world of evolutionary astrology because there is a ingress, the final ingress of Pluto into Aquarius happening on November 19th. And so with this new moon in the sign of Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto, who is at the final degree of Capricorn right now, for the last time in our lifetimes, we can certainly be feeling the weight, the anvil type weight of the, I've talked about it so much, so I don't want to repeat myself, but the weight of our societal structures that are based in man-made biases and prejudices and oppressions and biases that can very much be feeling heavy. So if you are feeling low energy, feeling super heavy, feeling like you're so sick of the status quo, these are all very normal symptoms to be having right now. And it's also very normal to be undergoing a review of the past 15 years and to really be feeling the weight of that. Every decision you made, every action you took, what was your sense of reality 15 years ago versus your sense of reality now, right? So they're like, these are, what did you learn in the school of hard knocks in the past 15 years? What did you learn the hard way? And what was the I guess the cost of that, like it takes time. Evolution takes time, right? And so any time that we invest in learning the lessons is not time wasted. However, it can feel very depressing or limiting, like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that, or I could have done something different. And it's like, it's all okay. There's these necessary reflections point us to the direction that we want to head into, right? And it's helpful to become aware of these things so that we are able to affect change and not simply be passive to history repeating itself. And I'm speaking, that goes the same for the micro, the personal, and the macro, the collective or the societal patterns and dynamics that we are a part of. And so, because, oh my gosh, I'm just like, where do I begin? I guess Pluto is opposing Mars. in the sign of Cancer. And it's being ruled by this moon in Scorpio, which is Pluto's sign. So some very interesting dynamics there with rulerships, very much so pointing to this, and I'm going to unpack this. Objectively seeing how subjective and instinctual desires that enter conscious awareness through the emotional body are in dynamic tension with the psychodynamics of the culture, society, and systems that make up external reality. So, an opposition is always, as I said in the last video, is when there is full sight, full view, objective view, right? It's this and this part of the circle, so it's not going to get more further apart from each other, and therefore increasing the level of objectivity to see to the bottom of these issues. And when we have the element of desire, which is fundamental in evolutionary astrology, Mars symbolizing that instinctual desire, Mars in Cancer symbolizing the instinctual desire that makes itself known to us through our emotional body, that causes us to veer into or lead off into a direction that is the cutting edge of our evolution. We desire things because we want to grow and evolve through those things. And then there's Pluto, who represents the psychodynamics of those desires, the iceberg beneath the surface of why we have those desires. And so when these two planets are opposing one another in this position at the final degree of the Cancer-Capricorn axis, we need to talk about some things here, collectively speaking. We need to talk about how the emotional body has been subjugated in our society, how ego is very misunderstood in our society. And what is the function of that, right? If we're really to like scale this back and look at the bigger picture perspective, it's like, we live in a culture and society that masquerades as celebrating individualization or individuality, right? Like, oh yeah, you can freely express, you can dress how you want at this job, or you can, I don't know, it's very individualistic. But actually, our society subjugates individualization. If there's somebody who goes against the grain of cultural or societal norms, they are demonized, aren't they? And so there is this needing to re-look at that and having a clearer picture of what the function of ego and emotional body is. Because right now, this month, it's no coincidence that this is setting the tone for Pluto's final ingress into Aquarius. There is a lot of emphasis on us understanding the function of ego as that which is our innermost, tendermost self that requires care and attention and nurturance. Our ego is not something to get rid of. Our ego is not something to cast away. That is what creates, that dynamic is exactly what creates the issues that we see within our society, right? If we try to get rid of something as opposed to integrating it, there's going to be complexes coming out of that. There's going to be issues. And so, yeah, I hope that makes sense. That I'm probably speaking to very sensitive souls here because of the nature of what I talk about. And so I just want to say, like, if you have been crying for the past 2 months, that's okay. You are human. If looking out there into the world and seeing the oppressions at play in our everyday reality breaks your heart, then my heart goes out to you, and I'm in the same boat, because this is a symptom of truly being alive and truly being here right now. And the fact that we feel these things is hard and heavy, and also is pointing us to our desire nature, right? It's like, okay, I am feeling, and right now it can feel difficult to imagine taking off in some direction because things feel so heavy. However, all of these feelings that we have internally can direct us towards the desires that we want to lean into, right? I want to become more involved in the systemic systems within society so that I can affect change at a political level, for example. Or I already have been very much a cog in the machine of the systems within my society, and it's time for me to take a step back and realize, what is my purpose? What am I going to use my power for in this life to affect change, right? So there's a bunch of different scenarios on how this can play out, but the bottom line is that the feelings that are coming up instinctually from our emotional body, which have been so wounded, right? Like, yeah, this moon is technically, or no, sorry, not the moon, but this Pluto-Mars opposition is technically square Chiron, who's in the sign of Aries. So as we have been discussing for quite some time now, the wounded sense of the individual, the wounded sense of authentic empowerment that is happening, that is coming to our awareness on the collective level, it can be like we're trying to make sense of the iceberg beneath the surface and feeling confused or maybe even abandoned by God around this. And I'm kind of speaking to the grand trine between Mars, Neptune, and Mercury in the sign of Scorpio here, because another huge, element of this new moon chart is that Mercury in Scorpio represents talking or not talking about the issues that are hidden underneath the surface, right? And so when we look out into our collective and systemic society, there is often quite a clear bias around the issues that society prefers to sweep under the rug, right? That people in positions in our society, I should say, prefer to sweep under the rug and say, oh, no, we're not going to look at that, because that's where things get a bit messy. That's where things just get a bit too complex, and we just really want to keep things working, like, let's keep the cog in the machine rolling here, let's not get caught up in the weeds or the details, right? And so with that being an overarching sort of bias in our society, it really does leave it up to the individual to go, okay, but I'm going to look there. I'm going to go there. I want to talk about these things because I want to make sense of this. I want to make sense of who I am in relationship to everything else around me. Right? And so this comes also to Juno being exactly T square this Mars-Pluto opposition. Like, what? So this is symbolizing that this desire nature that we have within ourselves that I've been talking about, that instinctual, emotional, body desire nature, and how that is in dynamic tension or in direct view of the hidden beneath the surface desires and functions of our society, culture, external reality. That is to be integrated through our relationships, right? Because there's a lot in between me and my insides, my inner felt sense of who I am, and the world out there. There's a lot. That's a full spectrum, right? That's one axis. And so I'm very, thankful and amazed to see Juno T-squaring this opposition so that we can know that integration between these two maybe polarizing set of desires happens through our relationships with those around us, people in our life, and particularly around reciprocity in relationships, the element of give and take, the element of talking and then listening, the element of giving feedback and providing feedback to others. Or what? Giving feedback and receiving feedback. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where that's where there is the potential for the waters to be muddier or clearer in terms of our individual desire nature and the fundamental whys of why our societies are the way that they are. And so there is this need for going our own way and individualizing our own unique desires, as well as communicating with those in our life and having reciprocal conversations and being open to receiving feedback from others, like going your own way, healing the wound to our individuality doesn't just mean that you go off by yourself and don't talk to anybody for the rest of your life, right? Like it's like what does individuality have to do with relationships? Everything. Like if our individual desires are expected to be sacrificed in order to be in relationship, that is a problem. Yeah. Just gonna leave it at that. And Venus, the ruler of our south node, is in Sagittarius. This moon is sexy quadrate the ruler of Sagittarius, Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. So I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but another reason why this moon can feel so intense is because it's requiring a major shift in how we orient to life. Like the big picture perspective, right on down to the details of our day to day life and how we make sense of phenomena. It is, yeah, asking us to really stretch our internal minds around that. Because how each of us views the world directly impacts our relationships, directly impacts our desire nature, directly impacts how we view the iceberg beneath the surface out there in reality. And our worldview also directly impacts our relating patterns, right? So, for example, if I don't know, I always have a hard time thinking about examples on the spot, but an example could be, yeah, it is. Uh, it is my worldview that I am. I don't know. Never mind. I give up. I can't think of an example. um, the point that I want to make about this is that also our internal processes inform how we view the world. There's a symbiotic relationship between how we view the world and our internal processes, right? Because what occurs to us throughout our life in terms of the level of oppression or challenges that one receives, that directly impacts that individual's internal processes, which therefore directly impacts that person's worldview. And this is all under review right now when we are thinking about how that impacts how we relate with others. It can create perhaps it's possible that it creates a complex of not wanting to give others the time of day because maybe we have been railroaded by others and therefore we're in a process of shutting down from relationships, right? There we go. I came up with an example. And also, when we are talking about Sagittarius, it's interesting to bring up the shadow dynamics of Sagittarius, which very often can be cult dynamics. So this brings up the matter of authenticity to our individual selves while we are relating to others. And a good way of determining whether cult dynamics are at play is to observe whether the people around us or the people that are in the organizations or groups that we are a part of, to simply observe, and review, are they walking their talk? Or is this a whole lot of la 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 to make you, think this, that, or the other thing, or to make you comply, right? It can be that sort of abuse of power. And then the dynamics of their actual intentions is hidden beneath the surface. You have to read between the lines to see that stuff. And with Venus conjoining Lilith, Pallas Athena, there is an element of shining a light on the hidden and unconscious parts of ourselves as well that have been unintegrated. And we're making discoveries that aid in understanding how those parts that we have subjugated within ourselves or have become subjugated because of oppressions that we have experienced externally, how those parts shape our relating patterns, right? So, a very, very, very good example of this one is the conditioning that boys don't cry. And so there can be this, that's an external outward conditioning. And then there can be this internal subjugation occurring within the boy who grows into a man, and he internalizes that crying is a weakness, and therefore that changes how he relates to others. It makes him shy away into a corner by himself when he's feeling sensitive, as opposed to openly communicating those more sensitive, more vulnerable, more emotional parts of himself with others, right? And it does require this inward reflection. I encourage us all to be inwardly reflecting about this type of stuff, the internalization of conditioning, because we can have our defenses up, and rightly so. If we've been effed over, defenses will be up, and that's okay. However, when we're able to look at what has become internalized and offer the self-compassion and nurturance for that, that's where change becomes a bit easier, because we've tended to the ego. We've crouched down to that little one inside and gone, I see you, I understand you. Okay, I know why you did that. And yeah, that's can be that simple. Alrighty. Yeah, really, Venus, give us sexy quadrate Mars as well, exact. How have your past relationships shaped your orientation to life, which I've talked about, right? So this moving forward in our relationships, with hopefully reclaiming a newly discovered sense of our individuality and authenticity. It does require a reckoning with our ego desires, which is, in my interpretation, simply taking time, as I just described, to sit down with that little one inside and provide them support. Get familiar with them. And so the last thing that I want to touch on is our culture's bias around demonizing ego, desire, and emotions. And there's a whole lot more in this chart. I could go on and on, but I'm going to leave it at that. I want us to be questioning this oppression and demonization of our desire nature, our emotional body, and our ego. And hopefully I've planted a few seeds of different ways that we can look at these things, and rather than internalizing that societal conditioning that all of these things are bad, our emotional body, our desire nature, rather I encourage us to try to see it from a different lens of something that actually requires a lot of attention on our part, to actually look at these parts of ourselves that reside within us. Because absolutely on a collective level, because of the heaviness and the weight of this conditioning, those parts inside of us are most likely needing attention and nurturance from us. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts and have this be received by people. So thank you, and please write in the comments if you have anything to share, if you have any questions. I would love to hear from you. What do you think about all of these ideas that I've presented? And yeah, take care.